Well, from the frightening number of murders we have seen, a record number of murders we have seen in the city, to ongoing issues with TTC and the battle to winning his second term as mayor, it has been a busy and trying year for Mayor John Tory, and he joins us now for a look back at some of the hurdles the city has had to face in 2018 and also will be working on in 2019 and beyond. Mayor Tory, thank you as always for joining us.
Pleasure, Roger.
Let's talk about the homicides. It's frightening numbers, record numbers. At one point we tried to dismiss because we said, well, 10 of those murders were that horrific van attack, but now we are approaching 100 people killed this year in homicides. The latest shooting happening at Fir Grove. It's a frightening concern in the city right now.
It is. It's frightening. It's angering. It's heartbreaking because, of course, it's causing people to be feeling unsafe in a city that is still very safe. But I am not sitting here telling you I have a magic answer to it. And the police chief, if he were sitting here, would say the same thing. We just have to keep working away at supporting the police, which we're doing, and I think you'll see next year we'll be doing the same thing. We have to get some of the laws changed, I think, and that means in particular cutting off the supply of guns. And as we'll announce later this morning, we've got to keep investing in kids and families to make sure that people don't ever think of picking up a gun. So I think those are the things we have to keep doing, and I'm absolutely confident that leaving aside the one-time nature, hopefully to God, one-time nature of things like the van attack, that we will get those numbers substantially down next year and get Toronto back to the way we're used to having it.
Now, Mike McCormick from the Police Association saying it's a shortage of officers on the street and carding. And
that's why we're hiring.
He says those are the things making a difference.
The carding part, look, I don't think anybody would argue convincingly that the notion of making arbitrary stops of people on the street for no reason at all, which is against the Charter of Rights, is going to, and frankly, there were years in the past when we came close to this number of homicides when we had carding. So I think really what it is that we do have to support the police by hiring. I think we're hiring 150 officers as we speak. They're in training. They'll be out on the streets next year, and we're going to hire more next year. So we will do the hiring that's necessary, but it goes way beyond that. To getting some changes in the laws. We have problems with the supply of guns, and to also investing in these neighborhoods so that, you know, if you think about it for a minute, I mean, if I saw a gun sitting on this table, I'd run 100 miles an hour the other way. I don't want to be near them. But these kids will pick them up, and when I say kids, they're young people. They will pick them up and they'll use them as part of the gang kind of, you know, the way they operate. And a lot of this is related to what has been, unfortunately, a very increased level of criminal gang activity in parts of the city.
What about the programs? What programs would you like to see implemented? Well,
you know, there's the ones that sound like they have no relationship to violence. But, I mean, if you have programs that help people stay in school, like homework clubs, I've talked to the kids this summer. I went out a lot because I was so concerned about what was going on. And they will describe a pattern to you of kids who start to struggle in school. They're not getting the help they need at home because oftentimes the parents can't help them. They then drop out of school, and when they drop out of school, they become prey to the gangs who will feed their sense of needing self-respect and self-esteem and so on. And the homework clubs just help kids do their homework and keep them sort of productively occupied after school instead of the alternative. And so these programs have a very direct relationship to a lot of things, including keeping kids away from crime, but also just giving those kids a positive direction in which to take their lives. And those are the kinds of things that we need to continue to invest in.
Another thing we want to talk about, the pedestrian deaths in this city. It feels almost like on the roads a little bit that there's a sense of lawlessness. We're watching people. I watch them all the time. I mean, I ride, I drive, I walk. People running red lights. We've seen near record numbers of pedestrian deaths. What is going to change?
Well, we have made thousands of changes across the city to intersection design, painting things on, putting up signs, putting in, we're about to put in photo radar in school zones. But in the end, you were touching on what is the real key to us breaking the back of this and getting back towards zero, which is our vision zero, which is a change in behavior. I think something happened in the last 10 or 15 years where everybody suddenly decided they had the right of way. Pedestrians thought they did, drivers thought they did, cyclists thought they did, and nobody thought about the fact that even if you do have the right of way, you still have to look out for the other guy. And I apply those comments in particular to people driving cars. People driving cars are surrounded by 2 tons of steel, and so they have a higher responsibility, and the distracted driving is still an epidemic. People are going too fast in places where they shouldn't be, and I just think it's one of those things where, starting with drivers but not confined to them, people have to start to go back to what I called a social contract I think we had in previous years, where you actually spent a minute of your time looking out for the other person, you know, whether they be a pedestrian or a cyclist. And I think if we got that to happen to a greater extent, you know, all the other stuff helps a lot, and we've done millions of dollars of it, but it really comes down in the end, doesn't it, to personal behavior. And so I hope that starts to change in the new year as well, because I think we can take those numbers down.
And transit, Premier Ford has said he wants to upload TTC. Are you going to fight that, or what are you going to...
Well, you know, there are people who say I should just be fighting it automatically, and all it is a campaign slogan. So I felt we had an obligation to actually find out what uploading the subway means. You know, what does it mean to him, to his government? And so we've said, with an overwhelming vote of the City Council, we're going to go and sit down at a table and find out the answer to that question. We have 1,000 questions about whether this is good for the employees, good for the riders, good for the taxpayers, and we'll get an answer to that question. And then if it's not a good deal for all those people, I can tell you, I will not be supporting it, but we've got to go find out what it is first, and that's what we're going to do starting in the new year. And, you know, I'm assuming a good faith on the part of the government, but if it turns out that there's not good faith, well, then we'll deal with it at that time. I can just tell you, I'm going to stand up for Toronto every single day, but it doesn't mean you don't go and sit down and look at different ways to doing things, even though I've described this possibly as a sort of a solution in search of a problem.
Okay. Mayor Tory, thank you very much for joining us.
And happy Christmas to you and all your viewers as well.
And to you as well. Thank you very much, Mayor.